Hello, hello, from beautiful St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where I am located right now. Hopefully the background noise and the lighting will cooperate. You can't see it just based on how I'm positioned right now, but behind me is the beautiful Caribbean Sea. None of that is necessarily relevant to this video, but just in case you're new here, sharing. My name is Lori Conkler. I'm an integrative success mentor and coach, retreat leader slash consultant, retreat and event consultant. I do actually plan events and retreats here on the island of St. Croix, not just my own, but for other people, and connect them all to all of the right resources and right people. So besides that, the real reason that I was coming here today is I was on a networking call earlier, and a question had come up, or the host had presented a question to everybody, and it was around like one word that's coming up for you right now. And I had missed the first part, which was with a meditation that had come up in the meditation, but a word that had kind of been on my mind lately, just with some, synchronicities and conversations that I was having, lots of different things seemingly falling into place and just really feeling in alignment, and things where I do sometimes also still get this feeling of like, ooh, this feels too good to be true, or can I trust this or that or whatever. Um, so alignment was the word that had come up for me. And I do think that this word can be definitely a bit overutilized in the personal development space. So I do sometimes hesitate to fully use it, but it had come up. And then right afterwards, my husband and I were having a conversation. And, admittedly, there was a bit of friction, not the good kind, but friction in the conversation between us. And again, this word came up of alignment, and the topic of the conversation was irrelevant, really, or it's irrelevant for this conversation. But what it reminded me, all of these things, what had come up on this call when that word came to me again, it was surrounding, surrounding. It was around the concept of, following my human design and what's actually aligned for me. And I utilize lots of different aspects when I create identity blueprints for my clients, which is a mix of intuition, um, and astrology, gene keys, human design, as well as just again my own guidance, my own intuition, which can be very, very strong for my clients. And sometimes, even though I've been doing this work for years, I find that even myself, sometimes I can feel myself falling back into some of these old patterns or belief systems, especially when I'm in the midst of a big growth period or up level expansion. A lot of times the internal, but also the external, like expanding of my business, expanding what it is that I'm doing, who I'm talking to, etc. And coming back to the conversation with my husband again, like again, not necessarily related here, but what I recognized was I was feeling a lot of pressure in this conversation, and something, I have an undefined root center. He has a defined root. So when you have a defined center, um, whatever energy, emotion, whatever, depending on which center it is, but whatever you're feeling in that's related to that, when it's defined, that is yours. Like you have consistent energy in that center. When you have an open or undefined center, you don't have consistent energy. And a lot of times what you're doing is you're absorbing other people's energy related to that, and then you're amplifying it out. So when it comes to the root, again, I was feeling his pressure and taking that on as myself. And this is something that for a long time I didn't know about myself, and so I would feel this like sense of internal pressure of just needing to get things done, to do things in a certain way, to relieve that pressure, to get things off my plate, to just feel better. And oftentimes when I reacted to that pressure, it in the past, of course things don't necessarily turn out because it wasn't mine to begin with. And so much of our conditioning as humans and, our lives and our work and all the things that we do in our relationships comes back to so much of this conditioning over the years, conditioning, trauma, all sorts of different things that impact our personal identity blueprint. But at our core, before all of the conditioning comes into things, we are designed a certain way, right? And to operate in a certain way. And when it comes to, your own personal blueprint, and when you can align things in your life, your work, your business, your relationships, and actually start to understand yourself and the depth of who you are at your core and what it is that you want. And so many people don't know this. Life, business, money, relationships, it all comes to you so much easier, and you become a magnet for the things that you want. Um, and there's the astrology, the human design, the unknown aspect of that. And then there's also just like straight up like the neuroscience behind all of this work that I do. So it's that combination of where spirituality and science actually meet each other. But from a human design perspective, again, when you are out of alignment or when you're absorbing other people's energy and then you're amplifying that out, you're not necessarily even living according to what you want to do. And a big part of the work that I do with people is to help them to know themselves, because so many of you have, and myself included, I didn't know myself fully, and it's taken years for me to actually get to a point where I truly understood myself, my motivations, what it is that I want, what it is that's actually aligned and going to feel easy for me in terms of how I live my life, how I make money, how I attract clients, all of those things. And for a long time, I made these things wrong because I thought I should fit into this box. It should work a certain way for me. Well, this person is doing that and that person's doing that, whether it be, well, that person has a great house, I want that. Or, ooh, they're going on vacations all the time and I want that. Or this person's making a lot of money in their business and I want that. So I need to do what they're doing, rather than actually looking at what it is that I wanted for myself. And it's so ironic, not really, that I'm here right now in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, where 10 years ago this month, we had moved here because I wanted that alignment for myself. I knew that even though on paper my life was great, and from the outside looking in, many people would have been like, "Hello, sign me up. I want your life." But it wasn't, even though it was what I thought I had wanted for my whole life, and I had built it, and I'd finally arrived there. It didn't feel the way I wanted it to because it wasn't mine. And when I came here to St. Croix, something shifted in me internally of just like, I felt so at ease, so myself. And it's been something that for years, has been really hard for me to articulate because it is just a feeling, but it is that alignment. And so I would ask you, like, where you're feeling friction in your life, where you're feeling frustration, where you're feeling anger or bitterness. And these are all different emotions and feelings that are associated with different human design types, that indicate that you are not in alignment with your natural blueprint. So understanding that is the first step to actually understanding where you're not living from your innate design, who you're here to be. And when you come and work with me, what we actually do is we dig into your personal identity blueprint, and we look at your money patterns, we look at your relationship, we look at your health, we look at all of it from that 360-degree view, because the thing is the things that are not working for you, they're all related. I guarantee it. Okay, well, that was fun. So I don't know where I got cut off, but I was just recording a video and actually finishing up here, talking ultimately about your personal identity blueprint and alignment and why that actually means so much. And one of the lovely traits about being here in the Virgin Islands is that internet isn't necessarily always as consistent as we'd like, especially out where we are. And we have no phone service or anything. So my internet dropped, and I'm not sure exactly at what point I stopped that, but just recording a little, I guess, add-on to what I was saying when it comes back to, who you are, what it is that you want. So many of the people in this world, women especially, like, you get to this age, and I was talking about this earlier with a woman that I met up with here who also, runs retreats here, and about, even how, like, working with coaches and mentors that were younger than us and that were still, even in their like 20s or like 30s, especially earlier 30s, who, even when we were that age, we would look and be like, it's not that much different as you get older, but it is. You reach a certain point of your life, a certain, age group. And I don't necessarily want to label it menopause or perimenopause, because that can be like an excuse, I think, for a lot of things in our life. But ultimately, our intentions change. What we want, how we operate changes when we reach a certain age. And it's just biologically too. Like when we're younger, we are here, biologically to reproduce, to have children, to nurture and take care of them. But then it's like you get to this certain age and you look at your life and you're like, I don't want to keep doing life this way. Even though I think I was saying, on paper, 10 years ago, everything looked perfect in my life. And for all intents and purposes, it was, because it was everything I thought that I wanted. But then I reached a certain age, a certain point in my life where it was like, I don't want to do life like this anymore. And it's not that it was inherently bad, but I was not happy. I wasn't in my joy. I wasn't waking up every day saying, oh my gosh, this is my life and I'm so excited by it. And, I think too that we're not actually taught, many of us, that your life can be whatever you make it. You can be happy, that joy is one of the most important things, and happiness. And that comes from alignment across all areas of our life, our work, our money, our relationships. And it's why we reach this point in our life where, like, it's no longer about the kids. It's no longer about our partners. It's no longer about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about actually coming back home to ourselves and who we were actually here to be, who we were born to be before all of those identities that we took on. And it's not saying that you didn't like some of it, right? Obviously, like if you have kids or you had a career that you enjoyed, I enjoyed my career. I learned so much and I carry so much of that in with me into my own business. But I knew that I didn't want to keep living, I didn't want to wait 20, 30 years to actually start living my life the way that I wanted to. I wanted to live life on my terms now. And that's what 10 years ago brought me here. And so that word alignment, it means so many different things to me. But at our core, it really is, are you actually aligned with who you want to be now? Not who you've been for much of your life, not what anyone else expects of you or tells you that you need to do, but when you wake up in the middle of the day, like, are you aligned with your joy? Are you aligned with what lights you up on a daily basis in the things that you do, the things that you say, how you live your life? Or are you just putting a bunch of shit on your later list saying, someday I'll get to that. Someday I'll retire. Someday I'll take that trip. Someday I'll take those dance classes. Someday I'll move to the Caribbean when I have enough money, when I, reach a certain level of success, when I do this, when I do that. And I see this happening all the time with women who are, in the corporate world. But I also see it even with those of you who have businesses, and you've started your business in large part because you wanted more freedom. You wanted that foundation to take, and build that joy off of. But then you end up rebuilding the same shit around you because at your core, you didn't come back to yourself, to what you actually wanted. You do what makes sense. You do what you've been conditioned for. So when you work with me, we dismantle the old paradigm, the old version of you, and we get very clear on who it is you're not, who it is that you're becoming, what it is that you want now, and what is actually required at both, the energetic, the physical body level, and what needs to shift in your relationships, your life, and how you're actually showing up according to your own personal identity and where you want to be, not 20 years from now, but where you want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, because you don't have to wait to start living your life on your terms if you choose to do it now. So if this is resonating at all with you, I would love to invite you to, join me, of course, always in my free community, the Unfiltered Collective. And should be a link somewhere for that. But I also would just invite you for a conversation. I have some great things coming up, starting with my paradigm shift mastermind experience, as well as my private bespoke VIP days, retreats, and my group retreats. And I have a couple of great ones coming up later this year and early 2027, depending on when you're watching this. And whatever you're watching, I always have more. Some of those happening here in the US Virgin Islands, some happening in Bali, Costa Rica, Mexico, some beautiful places happening. So reach out, let's have a conversation. But at the very least, if this is resonating for you, then subscribe to the channel, like it, comment on it, say, yes, this resonates, because that's you actually like setting that intention for yourself, connecting to that energy of it's time for a paradigm shift. I am ready for a new fucking paradigm. Okay. So I will see you in the next video or in a conversation. If you would like to book a call to see how we can work together as well, you can send me a message. There's an email somewhere in my profile, but otherwise you can always just message me on Facebook or LinkedIn. So I will see you in the next video, see you in the messages, and I will talk to you very soon.